And then midlife hits or menopause hits, and all of a sudden we can't do any of it. And that's because that estrogen that was holding us together by a thread is no longer there.
If you could go back and tell your perimenopausal self one thing about ADHD and menopause, what would it be?
This is why so often women kind of have it together, especially ADHD women. We're perfectionists, we're people pleasers. We put on all these masks to be like, yeah, I got this.
Welcome to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we're dishing out unfiltered truths about menopause with a side of sass and a sprinkle of grass.
Get ready to dive into the wild world of hot flashes, mood swings, and all of the other joys of being a queenager.
This ain't your grandma's podcast. No, we are here to talk our bodies, our fears, our passions, our desires, all while navigating this wild roller coaster ride of menopause.
So grab a glass of wine,
For free.
kick back, relax, and let's enjoy this hot flash wave together.
I'm Courtney Mamusha, and alongside me is my fabulous co-host, Dawn Fable.
We're just two outspoken broads who like to call it how it is.
Now, without further ado, let's kick off today's episode.
What's up, ladies? Welcome back to the Hot Flash Health Podcast, where we talk about hormones, heat, and all of the hell yeah moments of midlife. Today, we are tackling a double whammy, menopause and ADHD. Yep. If you've ever walked into a room like me and forgotten why in the hell you've walked in there and then you've cried about it 5 minutes later, same girls, same. Our guest is the fabulous Corie Wightlin, ADHD coach, cognitive science brainiac, and boundary setting queen. She's an ADHD and executive functioning coach who mixes cognitive science with real life compassion, just what we all need. She is smart as hell. She's got a BA in cognitive science, a master's in education and literacy, and she has all sorts of experience. Corie helps neurodiverse adults like us and families ditch and overwhelm and finally feel in control. So today she is here to break down what in the hell is happening with our shifting hormones and how they mess with our attention, memory, and our last inkling of patience. How can we get our power back? You tell us. She is launching a group coaching program just for midlife ADHDers like Court and I. It's the life raft you didn't know you needed. So welcome, girlfriend. Welcome.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. Thank you. I'm so excited to be talking about this. I was saying earlier, I've lived this myself and I support people in this life journey, midlife journey. So I'm really excited to be here to share any tips or tools or just, talk about how crappy it is.
I brought my box of tissue in case I need to start crying because...
And we'll talk about why you probably need to start crying more often than you used to need to start crying.
My crying though now is like yelling and then crying, or it's like yell crying. It's not like the ugly sobbing anymore. It's just like the pissed off yelling, crying. So I guess we can just start by what in the actual fuck is happening.
Yeah. So we talk a lot about estrogen throughout our lives, right? Back when we're, in our early 20s or whenever we get on birth control until pregnancy age, all of that. And so we think a lot about estrogen being just this okay, it's about pregnancy, it's about reproduction, all of that. However, estrogen plays a really important role in our neurobiology. So estrogen specifically helps us navigate the prefrontal cortex of our brain. And the prefrontal cortex is where all of those executive functions live. It's where they are, what the control center. So memory, emotional regulation, impulse control, planning, motivation, that all lives there. So once our estrogen drops or fluctuates, that creates this kind of challenge. It's like we're kind of offline or we're glitching in that prefrontal cortex. And on top of that, estrogen is an essential component of our dopamine and our serotonin. And our dopamine is our get your ass in gear neurotransmitter. It's all of where our motivation is. It's where our kind of pleasure center of getting shit done lives. And our serotonin is our happy, right? It makes us happy. It makes us want to do things. So when that estrogen drops or fluctuates, our dopamine and our serotonin really don't have a fighting chance. They don't have anything to support them. So not only is our memory goes down the drain and our time management and our impulse control and our emotional regulation, on top of that, our dopamine just is kind of at the whim of our estrogen. So that's why some days you feel like, yeah, I got this. I can get this done. I can do the laundry. I can do all the things. And other days you're just like, I have no task initiation, right? You're just paralyzed. I can't even make dinner. I can't even get up. Forget about going to the gym. Forget about anything else. And why we feel more sad, why we do have those, why we do cry more, why we do have, those outbursts, because our serotonin can't get up there. So this is why so often women kind of have it together, especially ADHD women. We're perfectionists, we're people pleasers. We put on all these masks to be like, yeah, I got this. Like, I can do it all. I can be PTA president and, also have a full-time job and also make dinner every night and also be in charge of the bake sale and blah, 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 all the things. And then midlife hits or menopause hits and all of a sudden we can't do any of it. And that's because that estrogen that was holding us together by a thread is no longer there. So all the things that we built are just kind of crumble. And then we feel really shitty because it feels like, why can't we do it anymore? I used to be able to X, Y, and Z, and now I can hardly get off the couch. And it's not us, right? It's nothing we've done. It's our brain chemistry is changing. Our brain is literally. So if we can acknowledge that and we can learn about that, that's when we can be like, okay, what I was doing isn't working anymore. I need to change it, and I need to empower myself to build new tools, new systems, new routines that work with my new brain. And then we can start to make that progress.
It is interesting because, you're kind of jumping into the science of it all. And I feel like everything you just said totally resonates with me, resonates with Dawn. I'm sure all of our listeners. And I fucking can't stop being a people pleaser. And then I'm worn out. And as Dawn mentioned before we even hopped on the call, she thought I looked like death yesterday because I'm just so fucking tired all the time. And it's hard to do. What tools can we do to rewire our brain from all these neurons that are firing and our nervous system shutting down? Like, are there some tips that I can get off the couch with?
Yes, there are. And the first step is really acknowledging what you just acknowledged, right? I am still trying to live and behave and show up the way I did when my brain was like this. And now my brain's like this and it doesn't fit. It's like trying to get into, the dress from when you were 16 and you're like, this did work just quite well, 30 years ago. So that's the first thing that I always encourage clients to do is just bring awareness. And one way that we can start to do that is literally getting data. So spending a week thinking and recording, okay, I did this activity. How much energy did I have to give to it? How much did it take me to motivate to even do it? How did I feel after? How did I feel during it? And what we can start to see is we can start to see some trend. There's some things that are still like pretty easy to do or still really exciting or, give you that feedback of excitement and serotonin and adrenaline and all those great things. And then you start to see like, oh, wow, I used to be able to get up and go to the gym at 5 a.m. every morning. I'm still trying to do that and it's killing me. It's hard to do it. It's hard to get there. And by 4 p.m, I'm done. And once you have that data from a week or two, you can start to change how you literally arrange your schedule. Maybe you don't go to the gym at 5 a.m. Maybe the afternoon is a better time for you now. Or maybe you don't say yes to every single social engagement like you used to. And you start to kind of have a hierarchy of what's important and what's maybe you can rearrange or you can take a rain check on. So that's the first thing that I always suggest is really finding that data of what's how you showing up now and how is it working for you, so that you can have that foundation for change.
That's such a great point. And you bring up data, and each of us are going to be really different, right? So it's important to look at us as individuals. You mentioned something earlier where executive functioning skills start to unravel first when perimenopause hits. For me, it feels like my brain has just like left me overnight. In your experience in working with all of these perimenopausal and menopausal women, what are some of the first and largest executive functioning skills that start to unravel?
I think that you brought up a little bit earlier, walking to the room and not remembering why you went. Working memory is a big one. So working memory is different than short-term and long-term memory. Working memory is, I like to think of it as like a big Post-it in our brain. And information comes in and gets onto this Post-it, and our brain decides what to do with it. Our brain decides like, oh yeah, I need to hold on to this for a couple hours or 10 minutes because there's something I'm going to have to do. Or, oh yeah, this is something we really need to remember for later. I'm going to put this more in short-term or long-term memory. And that's an executive function. So when we have poor working memory, the image that I give is that we have 100 little tiny Post-it notes that are all kind of floating around. Mm-hmm. And information can come in and it might grab onto one of those Post-it notes. So we might remember, why we went out to the car, but it might not. It might just go.
Is that sort of how people are categorizing or explaining the typical brain fog that happens? I mean, is that what you see, or is that something different?
That's something a little different. So working memory is I know, it's real fun. It's super fun.
We got 2 things coming at us. Fuck.
Two things.
100 things.
Right.
The memory and the brain fog. So the brain fog has more to do with just the working of the brain. So because our estrogen falls or is up or is all over the place, it is such an important neurotransmitter in our brain and our nervous system that you think of it as now all of a sudden those roads are really bumpy and there's potholes and there's there's dirt roads now where it used to be that like smooth sailing. So, that's obviously oversimplifying it. But what ends up happening is our brain literally is not functioning the same way that it used to. So I just took my laptop in this week because I was convinced that needed a new battery. And it was like, oh, it's just really old. Like, it's just not running how it used to. And, we don't even put this Intel processor in it anymore. And sorry. And I was like, yeah, I get it. Like, I brought her home and I was like, you and me, girl, same. That's how I feel.
Winning.
Like, yeah, exactly. Like nobody puts in this processor anymore either. So it's more, the brain fog is more our brain just not being able to function in the way. And then plus we're more tired, right? So we're physically more tired, but if we're talking about the brain, when you are in executive dysfunction, it takes so much more energy, brain energy, to do anything, to remember things, to start things, to organize things, to plan things. And so it's like pouring out the cup so much faster. And so your brain gets that fog because it's like, I have a lot going on and I just can't process it like I used to.
Well, and really quick, and Court, I know you're dying to ask the question that you're going to, but I saw something, our good friend Tamsin Fidel posted something the other day that says menopause symptoms cost the US $1.8 billion in missed work days. So you can imagine the female workforce and how brilliant women are in multitasking and executive functioning, and how that's contributing to those lost work days or loss of productivity. So first of all, that's a huge issue because women are very important to our workforce. And second of all, thank you for bringing attention and educating and giving people tools to work through this sorts of things, so these companies and organizations can start to support this, because that is a big dip in the US economy if you have a bunch of women who aren't showing up at work because our brain fog or any of the other related symptoms.
1.8
billion.
That's incredible. That's a huge number.
It is shocking. That's why we're all here talking about it, right? Like, how the fuck can we get better? So one of the things I wanted to talk to you about, because obviously you have a lot of experience personally and professionally with ADHD, is, I think it's become a long way, right? Where now people are openly testing, and, I tested my daughter and other, people are getting tested. I don't know if I have ADHD, but I have a very short attention span and I can barely focus on X, Y, and Z. And my brain's like, when I can remember what I'm doing about. But, you take ADHD, you take anxiety, you take everything else layered on top of us. So can you kind of take us through your journey of what that unmasking looked like, how you kind of realized what you were dealing with, and how you became you after that.
Yeah. So I was a super, super high masker. One statistic I always like to share is that ADHDers, whether they are diagnosed or not, have 20,000 more negative messages by the time they're 12 than neurotypical people. So when our brains are forming, there's a lot of negative messages. And as girls and women, we tend to then highly mask those. We want to show everyone we've got this, we're perfect, right? I was the quintessential overachiever in high school, in college, as a young parent. I did everything. And I used to joke that my plate was just huge. I'd say, oh, I have a platter. I don't have a plate because I can just do it all. Meanwhile, inside, I'm like, taking all the SSRI inhibitors and, just like, screaming at my kids in the car and then getting out of the car and being like, we're here, look at us. And so what I started to notice in my early 40s is I was still had that big platter and I was still piling everything on it, but it was starting to break. And I was missing things and I was missing deadlines and I was forgetting to show up places and I was forgetting to turn in really important papers for my kids. And I was so burnt out and exhausted and just not showing up as a partner for my husband, as a friend. And I had to do something. So the first thing I did was I quit my job, which was a huge thing. And I was super lucky that I was able to do that. But that was something that I just knew our family needed. So I quit my job and started this business about a year later. And I also decided that I couldn't say yes to everything. But I didn't exactly what you're saying, Courtney. I didn't know how to not say yes to everything. So I was like, I'm not going to say yes. Then I'd be in like, the meeting and I'd be like, yeah, I'll do that committee. Oh yeah, I'll do that committee. Sure. And then I'd leave and I'd be like, what the fuck did I just do? I was not going to say yes. So I learned specifically why as an ADHDer, I couldn't not say yes. But why that was so hard to me. And RSD, which is rejection sensitivity dysphoria, was a big part of my challenge. Is I was really worried people wouldn't like me, they would be disappointed in me, they would think less of me. So I worked on really building self-compassion. I went to self-compassion retreats. I learned everything I could about self-compassion. It's still a journey. I still work on it every day, but I'm getting there. And I also worked on impulse control, because a huge part of why we're people pleasers is the impulse control. We don't have a very good, ADHDers have 2 times. I'm sure you've heard this, now and not now. So we can't think ahead, right? So when I say yes to all the things, they sound super fun at the time. Like, yeah, I'll do all that. Like, that's great. And then future Corie is like, why? So I also had to learn about how to control my impulses and how to think ahead. So I built something called what I call a fast forward remote. And I started to practice it. And I started practice pausing and thinking 3 steps ahead before I did anything, before I committed to anything. And then the last thing that I did is I started to practice telling people what a mess I was. And so I started with people I trusted, that I knew, and I would say things like, you know what, I can't do all these committees. I know I said I could, but I actually have ADHD and I'm like really stressed and I'm overwhelmed and I'm full of anxiety. And people started to be like, oh my gosh, totally get it. You're good. Like, which committees can you do? And so I started to get the feedback, not of like, you suck and I can't believe this and you used to do everything, and more of just like, thank God you don't have that big platter because we wondered how you did it. And it actually created more authentic relationships with people in my life. And so those 3 steps really helped me kind of shed some of those masks. It's not perfect. I'm still working on it. But each of those kind of components led to more and more and more. And now I have no trouble saying no. And now I know how much mental energy, physical energy, emotional energy I have to give. And I'm able to pause and think to myself, do I want to take this on? Am I able to take this on? How will this impact the other areas of my life? And so building those boundaries and building that self-compassion and that impulse control was a game changer. And I never had to do that before perimenopause. I could hold that shit together.
Yeah, I love that.
Courtney and I have a saying that we constantly remind each other of, and it is, if it's not a fuck yes, it's a fuck no. And your approach is much more beautifully and eloquently put in the priority filter. It's really, from what I understand, and I'd love for you to talk to us about it, it's combining your values-based self-care with your real executive tools, right? So what are a few tools or practices that you swear by or coach your clients on to really help align your priority filter? How can we identify what truly matters in that moment and for us?
Yes. Okay. So I'll expand a little about on that fast forward remote, because that is like, and I use this with kids I coach, and I right now my oldest client is 70, and she and I just did the fast forward remote together. So it really is like an ADHD. Every ADHDer should learn this, in my opinion, because we don't have it. So the fast forward remote is literally starting to pay attention. The first thing is starting to pay attention to when you're triggered into wanting to make an impulsive decision. Whether that's saying yes to something, whether that's lying, because we're real good at lying ADHDers because we're very impulsive, whether that's doing something really risky, right? Whatever that impulse is. So we start to pay attention to that. And then we have a physical pause button. So for mine is I put my hand on my chest and I take 3 deep breaths. So when I notice that, like, yeah, I'm going to say yes to this, or I'm going to book this vacation without asking my husband, or I'm going to, X, Y, and Z, I pause now and I take 3 deep breaths. And then if I need to say this to someone, I'll say, you know what, give me a minute. Let me think about it, which I never have said that before in my entire life until this. Or, I might say, can I get back to you on that? Everybody's like, sure, no problem. Or I used to think people would say like, no, never mind, you're fired, or we're never want to see you again. And then I think about my 2 Pats, so we'll use this as an example, saying yes to heading the gala committee for ballet, or saying, no, I'll be a part of it, but I'm not going to head it. And this is a true story. And so I say, yes, I'm going to head the gala committee. And I literally walk myself through 3 steps forward of what that would look like, how much time it would take, how much energy it would take. Is future Corie going to be really excited about this, or is future Corie going to be swearing at me? And then if I say no, like the consequence might be like, I might feel bad because I want to do it, but I just don't have the time, or whatever it might be. And then from there, I come back and I hit play. So I hit play on A or I hit play on B. And neurotypical people, I hear tell, can do this kind of naturally, but ADHDers can't. We don't think ahead. And that's why ADHDers tend to be really risky people, and kids tend to be really impulsive. And so this is a really great strategy for me to start to take that pause. And is this a fuck yes, or is this a fuck no? Because if in my brain and in many neurodiverse brains, if we don't do this, we automatically divert to the yes because it's more exciting, it's novel, it's interesting. So that's one thing that I do. The other thing is with boundary setting. So ADHDers have a really hard time setting boundaries, regardless of perimenopause or not. We tend to be people pleasers. We tend to not even know what boundary we need because we're kind of all over the place. We have a hard time thinking ahead to like, wait, how does this boundary really affect me? We also have a really terrible memory. So we have a hard time remembering why we need to set the boundary in the first place. So I walk my clients through really getting clear about what the boundary is and writing it down. What is your boundary? And then 5 reasons why you're setting that boundary. How is this boundary going to support you personally? Who you need to communicate this boundary to, and when you're going to communicate it to that person. And sometimes that's ourselves. Sometimes we set these boundaries for ourselves. And then the last one that's really important is, what are you going to do when that boundary is pushed? Because we set boundaries for a reason, right? And almost any time we set a boundary, it's pushed. And so having that as like your fail safe of what are you going to do when this boundary is pushed, and having that already in your pocket can help when it is, you're ready to go and you can actually hold firm to that boundary.
Oh, I love that. I'm taking notes so I can share with my
I will be reading the transcript, and
I have a worksheet. If you want the worksheets about it, let me know. I have boundary setting worksheets.
So when you're working with women, right, whether we have ADHD or not, there's so many of us, and me, I always think about myself because I'm, again, like most of what you said, I'm like, yeah, I do that. Yeah, I do that. So I'm a yes there. Like, so maybe I do have ADHD. But setting boundaries is really hard for me. And I'm sure it's really hard for women because, again, we're brought up in this loving, nurturing way of like, yes, be accommodating, and yes, do this. And you have to be nice to succeed. So how do you coach people who struggle with setting boundaries and where it might not sound great on paper or they want to do it, but it's actually good in practice? Do you have any scripts or mindset flips that help your clients stop saying yes out of guilt, right? Like, how can we not do this?
And so, you brought up mindset. A huge part of what I do with especially women clients is I always triage this as mindset because, back to that 20,000 negative messages, and even women that aren't officially diagnosed with ADHD that come to me with executive dysfunction, they've gotten a lot of negative messages as well, right? Which is part of why we become people pleasers, why we become yes. So the first thing that we work on is really that mindset. And so when those thoughts come of, I really don't want to say yes to this project at work, but I'm going to because I feel really bad and everyone else is working so hard. I don't think I'm working as hard as everyone else. All of those thoughts that come up is we first just stop and we say, like, thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. And that's something that I have like my clients write down. I've had my kids write it down in their rooms. Thoughts are just thoughts. They're not facts. And we go through thought by thought and we think about each thought. Is this a true thought? And how you know it's a true thought is you can back it up with data, right? So a thought of everyone else is working so much harder than me at this job, so I should say yes to this project. Okay, can you prove that? Is Alex over there working harder than you? Is John over there working harder than you? Prove it. Is it a helpful thought? Is it going to help you be the person you want to be? Show up and be the person you want to be at work and for yourself. So is it true? Is it helpful? And is it kind? Is this thought something you would say to your best friend if she came to you with this exact same problem, or your kid or your spouse? So flipping it. And if it can't muster those three, then what is a reframe for it? What do you say instead? So maybe a reframe is, I feel like I should do this because I'm feeling like I'm not working as hard as everyone else. But in fact, I have taken on X, Y, and Z project and I'm working really hard at those. And if I take on this other one, the truth is I'm not going to have time to do both. If we can't pause and really look strategically at our thoughts, they take over, right? They're like the mean girl in middle school and they just like into our brains. So that's one way that I do that. Another way is really building self-compassion, like I spoke about before. If we can't treat ourselves with compassion, regardless of what storm is around us, then we don't really have any fighting chance in setting these boundaries or saying no or standing up for ourselves. So building acts of self-compassion and building that mindset of self-compassion is kind of the foundation for being able to move forward. So we work a lot on that as well.
So powerful. And you have such experience because you've done individual coaching, you've done group coaching with midlife adults with ADHD like us. You've helped so many people create these breakthroughs in this space. If you could go back, because you experienced this firsthand, right? Which allowed you to get into this business. If you could go back and tell your perimenopausal self one thing about ADHD and menopause, what would it be?
It would be, don't be surprised that everything you thought worked for you doesn't work anymore. And that it is not your fault. And does not make you a bad person, does not make you a bad friend, does not make you a bad employee. It's gonna happen, like you said, overnight, basically, and it is not your fault. And that you are going to rebuild new systems and rebuild new tools that will work for this new brain that you have.
That's so powerful and so empowering because, Courtney and I were just talking like yesterday, like, why are we both so tired? Why are we so burnt out? I just ran a full lab testing, to evaluate every single function in my body, thinking that there is desperately something wrong with me physically. Like I don't understand why I just don't have the tenacity and energy and grit and all of that. And I'm trying to search endlessly for all these answers. But what you just said is so powerful because it's happening to most of us out there. And if we just accept it and embrace that new brain of ours and new functioning capacity, maybe it shifts our mindset, because maybe instead of trying to find something wrong with ourselves and like we're dying, maybe if you flip the script, it's a whole different deal. Like that to me that just changed my life. So thank you.
Yay. Well, and if I can add, like when we're stressed, right? When we're treating ourselves like shit and we're stressed and we have all the shame and we're trying to like force ourselves into that box that we used to be in, our brains go into fight or flight, right? Our brains are like, oh no, something's wrong. This is really bad. And when we are in fight or flight, our prefrontal cortex completely shuts down because we don't need it. Right? If you're getting attacked by a bear, you don't want to be like, let me hit that fast forward remote. Let me take a pause.
And is that why anxiety is so prevalent in women, not only who are going through these hormonal changes, but with ADHD because of what you just said? Exactly.
And so it compounds, right? If you're going to the doctor and you're like, run all the tests, there's something seriously wrong with me. I'm so, I'm like, at the end of my rope, I can't do this anymore. You're putting your body into this, hyper stressed, hyper alert state. And then you're like, okay, now I'm going to try to do my taxes. And your brain is like, hell no. There's that bear. Like what? Like, no, thank you. And so taking the time to just be like, oh, okay, there's a shift. Something's new. I can still love myself. I can still be kind to myself. I can still figure this out. It helps to bring down that cortisol that's telling you the bear's there. And then you actually can build the tools, right? You actually can make those shifts.
And I want to bring up, because I never really realized this, but, a lot of people know who listen, but I lost my parents pretty close to each other. And I think I went like above fight or flight into freeze mode. And I don't think a lot of people realize this or think about this, that your nervous system literally shuts down. Like I could not get out of bed. I could not even face a computer. I was trying to hold it together and be a mother and, be a wife and do what I could. But like you literally can shut down. And I love what you said. It's like change your mindset, because I was so hard on myself, and that put me even deeper into like a depression or freeze mode or whatever I was going through. Not to mention, I probably didn't even realize my fucking hormones were all over the place too, because, who thinks about that? But I do love that too, what Dawn said. It's just, kind of flip your mindset and tell yourself you're okay and deal with what you're dealing with right now and don't necessarily stress about tomorrow.
Yeah, that's so important, right? And like if you think back to when you were in that freeze mode, right? And just letting yourself, feel those feelings, because oftentimes we don't. We're like, oh, I got to get up. I got to do this. I got to do that. And then, like you said, it just puts even more pressure on our nervous system. And our nervous system's like, we're just trying to like get us through this really terrible time. Could you just chill out for a minute so I can just
pause.
do this?
Take a pause, bitches. Take a pause. Well, I know I love you. Dawn loves you. We would love to work with you. Can you tell people about your coaching program and how others can get in touch with you and share your wisdom?
Yes.
Or absorb your wisdom?
Yes, thank you. Well, so as Dawn said earlier, I'm really excited because in the next several weeks, I am launching a group program for midlife folks, that whether you're diagnosed with ADHD or you're just experiencing this executive dysfunction because of life and hormones. And why I'm so excited about a group program is that, as we all just kind of experienced here, it can feel really isolating. We can feel like we're the only ones, right? I have a client right now and she's like, everyone else has it all together. Their nails are always done. They're always have Shabbat dinner on the table. They're always this. And I'm just like, a pile of shit. So having people around you that can get it and understand and hear different stories and different successes can be really exciting. So I'm really excited about this group program. So folks can set up a call with me if that's something they're interested in. I also have my one-on-one program. It's called Build Your Effing Toolbox, Executive Functioning Toolbox. And it's a 12-session program where it's more one-on-one, high touch, individualized. But I also have some freebies. I do workshops all the time that I record, and I'm happy to send the links for those if people just kind of want to get started in that way as well.
Yeah, it's such an important topic that you're addressing, and we thank you because you're bringing so much light to it. And I think, for a lot of us, you're validating it that we're not crazy and we're not dying, but we're just entering this next awakening in this beautiful disaster that we call life. And it's so nice to just have experts in the space who are hearing women and seeing them where they're at and meeting them where they're at and giving them tools to really embrace that next chapter. So we appreciate you, Corie.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
It's so, it's awesome because Courtney and I have all of these really empowering, really smart, badass, amazing guests on who are just here to enlighten and empower us. And so often, Courtney and I are sort of the test monkeys, right? We're just sitting here like nodding our heads like, oh my gosh, that's me. That's me. She's talking about me. Courtney, she's talking about you.
We're like, how do you know us so well?
So we're so proud to bring all of this to the forefront. And with that being said, we so graciously ask all of our listeners to subscribe, to follow, to share, to promote, to yell and scream about Hot Flash Health, share with your friends, listen to all of the wonderful places you can find podcasts, Spotify, Apple, YouTube, you name it. And Court, you wrap it up, sister. You do it the best in your cute little red Snow White period dress.
Not a dress, just a shirt. Well, that's a wrap on today's episode, everybody. Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, but together we got this. As Dawn mentioned, please, please, please follow us on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook. We're at Flash Health. You can stream and subscribe to us on our podcast. YouTube is the most fun because you get to see our smiling faces and how amazing our guests are live. Well, not live, recorded. But you can also listen on Apple and Spotify. Share your thoughts with us anytime. Keep on listening. And until next time, stay sassy, stay fabulous, and keep those hot flashes in check. And that's a wrap on today's episode. Remember, menopause may be a wild ride, but together we've got this.
And don't forget to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok at Hot Flash Health.
Stream and subscribe to us on any of your favorite listening platforms like YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.
And of course, share your thoughts with us. We love hearing from our amazing listeners.
And until next time, stay sassy, stay fabulous, and keep those hot flashes in check.
Yeah, girl.
Woo!